Aaron, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great, thank you.
Aaron, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great, thank you.
Aaron, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great, thank you.
Aaron, we're in one heck of a loop, so you can just disregard.
Aaron, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Aaron, are you able to hear us now?
Yes.
I'm just waiting for the loop to start again. Aaron, are you able to hear us now?
Yes.
I'm just waiting for. Aaron, we're going to try this again. Are you able to hear us now, Aaron?
Yes.
Please pause for looping.
I can't tell if I'm responding to your initial question or a repeat of it.
No. At this point, nobody knows.
Am I the only one that is causing this issue?
No, I think we've got it fixed now.
Okay.
Just knock on wood. I'll now call to order the November 25th, 2024 City of Abilene, Kansas City Commission meeting. Shayla, may we please have a roll call?
Mayor Ryan,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Witt,
Present.
Commissioner Koloff,
Here.
Commissioner Meisenberg.
Here.
Roll call's complete.
Okay, thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and our first item is approval of today's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for November 25th, 2024 City Commission meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. Our next item is the consent agenda, which consists of two items: the meeting minutes from the November 12th, 2024 regular meeting, as well as resolution number 112524-3, a resolution approving longevity pay per section 13.16 of the Employees Policy and Guidelines of the City of Abilene, Kansas.
Really quick here, Mr. Mayor, what is the guidelines for being on the consent agenda?
I don't know that there are any set ones, typically things that have been, I guess, kind of agreed to in discussion, yeah.
I would just maybe request that the item B be removed from the consent agenda. I guess I feel like anything that involves expenditure of funds maybe should not be on the consent agenda.
Not sure we're able. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we can. Since the agenda's already been approved.
We can remove it from the consent agenda with a majority vote.
Right. I just didn't know. Aaron, do you have any input on that with the agenda already being approved?
I would say that although the agenda has been approved, when we get to the consent agenda, I think it would be appropriate if a motion is made and seconded and voted on to remove an item from the consent agenda.
And then we can add it to the regular.
Yes.
Okay.
I would make the motion to remove 5B and place it on the agenda as 7E.
I'll second that.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we do a roll call vote. Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. And then we will be voting on approval of the consent agenda, which will now include meeting minutes from the November 12th, 2024 regular meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. Next item under public comments and communications is 6A, which is a public forum. If anyone would like to address an item not on our regular agenda today, they may do so at this time. Do we have anyone that would like to address an item not on our agenda? Sorry. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to 6B, cyber insurance update.
I think we
Yep,
have some.
cyber insurance update. Kyle Becker with Smart Insurance.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Yeah. See that? I think.
There you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I think in your packet, you'll see a renewal for our cyber insurance. Bearer of good news for a change. Same coverages that we had last year, although our retention has gone down from the 10,000 to 5,000. We have an increased invoice manipulation limit. of 250,000, and then we also have 250 of bodily injury in addition to all the coverages that we had last year. We at the agency have switched brokerages to someone who helped develop this product and very knowledgeable. So he took it out to market. We're $4,500 cheaper than we were last year. So 71,2245 for the year. If no questions, I'll have Mr. Marsh sign off on it and we'll get it ordered and back to you for the first of the year.
Do we have any questions for Kyle?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our next item under business items is 7A, consider approval of the execution of a 5-year master agreement with Olson Inc. for engineering services for the city of Abilene as described in qualifications in the request for qualifications. City Manager Marsh.
Commissioners, this is the agreement or the proposal for a 5-year master agreement with Olson that we talked about last meeting. So just request approval or recommend approval today.
I think I spoke at length, I guess, on my opinions here. I do think if we are going to approve Olson, which frankly I'm opposed to, that we need to follow our purchasing policy and limit that to a 2-year term.
Not sure that our purchasing policy comes into play on these. City Manager Marsh, does that typically fall under the purchasing policy or?
I don't know if the length of contract does. I think I'd have to defer to the attorney on that. I mean, we've had a 3-year one for however long, so I don't know that. I think that's completely up to you as a commission.
For the RFQ, it's written for a 5-year agreement, but it's renewed every year. That's my expectation on how the agreement's structured. So it's one of those deals where it's a 5-year agreement, but it comes to us every year, or it comes to the governing body every year for renewal. So.
I'm happy to revoice my concerns. I feel like we saw plenty of opportunities for an engineer that would really represent the interests of the city with the 14th and Van Buren project. And I would say still currently with the Buckeye Street project, the engineering costs that were proposed by Olson for 3 blocks of mill and overlay is $150,000. And yes, we've had Olson for 13 years. There's a lot of projects that are in the works. I'm frankly ready to see a different look for projects in the city of Abilene. I know there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time on the 14th and Van Buren project. I personally probably spent 50 or 60 hours, I would say, fighting some of the ridiculous proposals that Olson put in front of us. I'm not sure what direction they were given or how they came to those choices. But $3.8 million when the county was able to come up with a solution for $300,000 to me is very, very telling. I would just like to see a different pathway forward for the city of Abilene. I think, we are a great city, but just looking at the Buckeye project, they've proposed $400,000 that we get for our C-CLIP state money that's coming back to us. Those are our tax dollars, which is sufficient for the mill and overlay project. And we're proposing another $600,000 that's going to come out of taxpayers' pockets when we could be doing a mill and overlay on 6 more blocks with that money, rather than putting in fancy bump outs and who knows what else on that project. I'm ready for something different. And I guess I would encourage my fellow commissioners I think it was Caw Valley that was second place. I would encourage them to consider Caw Valley again, just talking about this process, I think I mentioned it yesterday or in the last 2 weeks ago. You know, there's a point taken away if the proposal has more than 20 pages. And I don't think that, I think there's some question as to how objective this form is in evaluating the engineering services proposals that were submitted. That to me is the most egregious, but I think there's a lot of subjectivity just in this form. I guess I would say in the absence of approving Caw Valley, I would be fine with approving this for a year or continuing Olson for one more year to redo this RFQ process when we have likely 3 new commissioners. So that's my my input on that.
Do we have any other questions for city staff on this item?
Well, I have a question for Trevor because he brought this up. So if it's a 5-year agreement, but we have to approve it every year. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what the RFQ said.
Okay, so then if we don't approve it, do we switch? Or,
Yeah, it would have to go back
okay,
out for
that's what I
RFQ.
wondered. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I don't have that RFQ in front of me. Do you have that language, Trevor? Commissioner?
It was in the previous, it's in the agenda packet.
From the previous week.
Oh, it was in this week's agenda packet as well.
So I'm trying to pull this up here, but your understanding of this is that it is a 5-year contract. It has to be renewed every year.
Yeah, that's the language I remember reading. And also there's other language in that RFQ that states this doesn't prevent the city from using other engineering firms. Kind of like as we had, I think there was a Caw Valley check in this week's packet, so. Yep.
Yeah, then on that wastewater treatment plant, we use BG.
And I'm just looking at what I'm seeing as RFQ engineering services dated October 1, 2024. It says, as a result of this RFQ, the city will select a top qualifier with whom to commence contract negotiations. If negotiations are successful, the city will enter into a professional services contract with that firm. The city will consider a contract of approximately 5 years with an option to renew the contract annually. I guess maybe I'm looking to City Attorney Martin for how you would interpret that language. It goes on further. The city retains the option to renew the contract annually upon review of performance and services, but doesn't speak to whether that's during the initial term or only after the termination of that 5-year term.
Sure. I was attempting to pull up the agreement. As you described it, I understand that it is presumed to be a 5-year agreement, but the city effectively has an annual opt-out, and I'm not readily finding it, but I expect we would find that the city under that arrangement would have an annual right to non-renew, which would likely require some affirmative action. While I'm looking for that, I don't know if Mr. Boshamp or anyone else associated with Olson is maybe in a position to describe their understanding of that arrangement.
Yeah, Jared Loomis with Olson. We've seen it a variety of ways. I don't know if I had an impression on what that was. I hadn't thought of it either way up to this point. I would say what is typical is at least three, with not a annual renewal in other entities or in other municipalities that we've been on call for. So I guess that's my thoughts. I don't know if I had the annual thought prior to that.
What section of the RFQ were you just reading from?
I'm on page 23 of the agenda, if that's helpful. It looks like page 1 of 5.
Perfect.
It's in that second paragraph of the introduction.
Sure. And so after looking at that, and as you may have observed, the contract is not in the packet, but I would interpret that as I described earlier, a contract with a term of a maximum of 5 years with effectively an annual opt-out. And in the absence of any specific language before us, I think, we would need to see the exact language being proposed. But I think in this context, we could specify what the city commission would like that to be if you wish to do so. But typically that would be, if no action is taken, then it goes on for 5 years. But if notice is given, let's say 60 to 90 days prior to the end of the year, then the city has the ability to get out at any annual interval. That's how I would interpret that and what I would expect to see based on how the RFQ is written.
I guess I will add one more, just kind of thinking through it a little more. Design timelines and processes aren't typically on a calendar year timeline. So just thinking through the efficiency of design and best use of dollars, renewing it every year or putting it up for every year would lead to inefficiency and passing off designs if necessary. So just another thing to consider. We are designing through December 31st to January 1st. Nothing ever stops there. Just something else to consider.
I certainly agree with your assessment there, and I think as we've used other engineers in the past, I think it would probably be more efficient to continue with those if there ever were a change.
So it's structured in a way that it requires some affirmative action by the city commission to keep it going, or it could be structured such that it is presumed to go on for 5 years unless affirmative action is taken to terminate it early. And I think either of those would be appropriate, but that would be up to your business judgment as a city commission.
City Attorney Martin, I think another issue that I've brought up before, and I think that you said you did not feel that this was in place, but are we able to impose a fiduciary duty upon the city engineer?
I think when that question was previously asked of me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a question of, does an engineer owe a fiduciary duty? And I think my answer was no. The ordinary course of that relationship does not impose that type of duty. The typical duty is the duty of ordinary care of a professional in like circumstances. And that's a lower standard than a fiduciary duty, but that's pretty typical of the engineering industry. As I understand your question now, it is, can we nonetheless impose a fiduciary duty? I have not researched that to know whether there's any limitations on that, but in the absence of any awareness of a reason we cannot, I would say, yes, you could, if an engineer were agreeable to that. I think, typically parties to a contract can agree on any terms they wish, so long as they're not unlawful. And that strikes me as something that two willing parties could agree on if they wanted to.
Just as I think about the role of the city engineer, I think if in the past the city has had an employee who was a city engineer, and as an employee, that person would almost certainly owe a fiduciary responsibility to the city. And so I feel like that's a reasonable requirement for anyone who would serve as the city engineer through a contract.
Do we have any other questions for city staff on this item?
City Manager Marsh, with this item, is the expectation if the commission moves forward with this, that then a contract would be on an agenda at a later date, or, okay.
I would like to make a motion to approve Caw Valley for a annual renewable 5-year term as city engineer, with the understanding that they would be a fiduciary.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Okay, seeing none, motion fails due to lack of second.
I'll make a motion to approve the master agreement for a period of 5 years with Olson for engineering services as described in the request for qualifications.
And I'll second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion?
I think just a clarification, City Attorney Martin asked about whether there would be a positive or negative affirmation of that contract every year. I guess I don't know if that needs to be part of your motion or what your expectations are in that motion.
I think that would be included in the actual contract that's approved by us. That would be my understanding.
I guess just so we're clear what we're voting on, we discussed either of those as options. So I just want to make sure that we've got good guidance from Mr. Martin as he moves forward.
Yes, and I gather Mr. Marsh responded with a yes, that the contract would ultimately come back before you. I couldn't make that out, but if that's correct, that a contract will now be negotiated and presented at a future meeting, we could certainly address that. But if the commission has a preference that it wishes to describe now, that would be helpful from a contract negotiation perspective. Otherwise, Mr. Marsh can negotiate that and present it at a future meeting.
Would you be open to an amendment to your motion to require them to act as a fiduciary?
If it's not necessary, I wouldn't entertain it.
Well, it's a choice for us to make. So like I stated, if the city engineer were an individual or who was an employee, they would owe that to us essentially by virtue of being an employee. But by virtue of being contract, it's not automatic. And so essentially by being a fiduciary, they essentially have to prioritize the public interest over their personal benefit. That's kind of one of the, I would say, the standards, other than just the standards that Mr. Martin mentioned that they would owe us by virtue of being the city engineer. I guess I'd make the motion to add that they do have a fiduciary responsibility, and I hope for a second.
We already have a motion, a second on the table.
I'm making a motion to amend the motion.
Say something. Okay, we have a motion to amend the original motion. Do we have a second on that? Do we have a second? Okay, motion to amend fails due to lack of second. Do we have any further commission discussion on this item? Seeing none, would a roll call vote? Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Nay.
myself, yes, motion carries. Our next item is 7B, consider approval of resolution number 112524-1, a resolution providing for an adjustment to the pay plan of the city of Abilene, Kansas to ensure appropriate compensation for city employees as compared with the comparable labor market. City Clerk Moore.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is the resolution that would provide for the adjustment to the pay plan, 3% across the board. This increase was budgeted in the budget that you passed in the fall.
Do you have any questions for staff on this item?
Shayla, did you review the LKM study? The League of Kansas Municipalities pay study?
I did. It's been a minute though, so.
Okay. Do you have, I guess, what is your interpretation of where Abilene ranks relative to other cities based off of that study?
I don't have it in front of me, so I can't answer that.
City Manager Marsh, I think you referenced this during the last pay raise. Do you have any input on that?
We're right in line with other cities. I think the last study I saw, which was not the LKM one, but was one on KACM, it was anywhere from 3 to 4.5. Somewhere in there was the average. But I think we're
Just so I'm clear, I'm specifically asking where Abilene ranked on pay relative to the other
I
77
have not
cities.
I have not looked at the study in a hot minute, so I don't know where it is. I don't know where we rank.
So you don't have any idea where we rank relative to the other 77 cities in the second class?
No.
That was the, when we hired Austin Peters Group to do that pay plan study, that's what they did. Yep.
Can you explain the confidentiality of that LKM study? I guess I'm not clear. Can that data be presented in public?
I would recommend that you contact the general counsel of the league and find out from them. I don't know off the top of my head whether that would be a confidential. I do know that you have to have a password to get into it. So and only those cities that responded received a copy of it. So I would imagine there is some confidentiality and some whatever legalese that entails. So I would recommend you contact the general counsel of the League of Kansas Municipalities.
So I have that data and I have chewed it up at length. I don't know if the city commission would be open to an executive session to look at that data so as not to disclose anything inappropriate. Is that? Aaron, can you help me out with the language for that?
Sure. We're talking about a wage study for municipality or cities of the second class in Kansas. Is that correct?
This is it's done by the League of Kansas Municipalities, and I guess my concern is that there is some data that they want to keep proprietary. And so I guess to respect that, would an executive session be most appropriate for that?
I'm not readily thinking of a statutory basis to discuss that in an executive session. It's not legal. It's not a personnel matter. It doesn't relate to trade secrets or acquisition of real estate. There are a few other bases for going into an executive session, but I don't believe they would apply. So right now, I'm not thinking of a reason that we could. I would need to look into that and report back, but I'm not expecting that I will likely find a justification to discuss that in executive session. Just because something is confidential in the hands of a third party or even us doesn't mean that we can discuss it in an executive session unless it meets one of the statutory justifications.
I
So
guess, I guess where I think it falls is personnel matters of non-elected personnel, where it relates to their payment. I feel like that it falls under that exception of the act.
I understand where you're coming from with that. I think feel strongly that that would not apply. That only applies when you were talking about specific employees, not the workforce in its entirety. The purpose of that statutory justification is to protect individual privacy rights of individually identifiable employees, and so as not to conduct reviews or critiques of their performance in public. And I think a higher level, wage study discussion would not qualify for that. And there's some attorney general opinions that speak to that. So I don't believe that would provide a basis.
Are you able to, I guess, satisfactory in a satisfactory way, make your point generalities that wouldn't be citing specific data found within, like specific data points? I feel like there's probably a way to kind of discuss your general points, I guess, without getting into those specifics that would reach any.
Yeah,
Kind of
let me attempt to do that here. Again, I think I've intimated that I'm severely skeptical of the Austin Peters data, but and this is kind of, obviously we're talking about dozens of employees in different departments with different job responsibilities. But when those are broken down, I guess I don't know what the expectation of the commission is as to where Abilene falls percentile wise within that group. So there's 77 cities that the state considers to be cities of the second class, of which Abilene is one. Abilene is reliably in the top 10% or top 11 out of 77 when it comes to pay. And again, that's relative to cities of the second class. Some of those the size varies fairly dramatically. But I just think it's important that we have that data. And again, I think we need to take care of our employees. We need to pay them well, but I don't think that we need to be the highest payers in the state either. I don't know, again, I don't know if I can just share kind of the graphical representation with the city manager to share with the city commission, or what the best way is to present that. I guess at that point it becomes public, which frankly I'm fine with, because it's our data that we've given to them to sell back to us. So is that an acceptable manner to disseminate that information, City Attorney Martin?
I think you can, let me start by saying I'm not familiar with the circumstances under which we agreed to be bound by any sort of confidentiality. I gather that it was transmitted to us with some expectation of that, but I haven't seen the exact verbiage. But generally, I think, interpreting that information publicly, or transforming it into a different version that we discuss publicly, I think is fine. That's probably the purpose of sharing it, with the expectation that decisions may be made and it may be relied upon. But I would need to see the exact language that bound the city to describe it further or speak with more confidence. But I think any of its contents you could certainly share or speak to verbally during a meeting. Is that what you were hoping to do, or did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, again, we're talking about hundreds of data points here, so anybody's going to go cross-eyed if I start talking about this. So I guess it's most useful in a visual format. And so from that perspective, I would like I guess, my fellow commissioners to be able to review that data as well.
And it was sent out to all of us.
Yeah, and just so I'm clear, I've kind of chopped it up about a dozen different ways and given some charts and numbers versus averages so that's a little bit more visible than you can get basically just looking at an Excel spreadsheet.
Just a point of clarification, the basis of the Austin Peters study wasn't just to compare us to other cities our size. We also have to compare it to other entities in the surrounding Abilene and surrounding communities that our employees could drive to and make a much better wage. So it's not just comparing it to cities of our size, it's opening up the total workforce around us.
And I think this did compare, I mean, the data in the LKM, I think also includes the county data. So I think that is included when it was available. So including Dickinson County, I guess, as a data point.
The county has updated their pay plan since ours has been updated as well. So their new pay plan was not included in the study that was done.
One of the, I guess, kind of the ways I chopped this up was basically with the current data and then also with the 3% increase. So that could be visible as well. So you know exactly what you're looking at. And then compared them against essentially the 90th percentile. So those that would be in the top 10% of that pay structure.
Do you have any additional questions for city staff on this item? It is an action item, so hearing no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to table this until the next regularly scheduled meeting to give commissioners time to review the data I've prepared.
I'll second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion?
I do have a question. With us tabling this, would it impact any rate base or anything?
These pay raises aren't in effect until January 1, so
We'll be
we have
okay.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any further commission discussion?
Just really quickly, I will email that to City Manager Marsh, I guess, if he wants to review that with City Attorney Martin to determine the appropriateness of disseminating that.
Do we have any further commission discussion on this item? Yep. Seeing none, would roll call vote. Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
No.
myself, no. Motion carries. Our next item is 7C, consider approval of resolution number 112524-2, a resolution concerning license, permit, and other user-related fees of the city of Abilene, Kansas. City Clerk Moore.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is a resolution to just annually update our fees for everything we charge fees for across the board. I'm open for questions if you have any.
I think Commissioner Koloff last time, City Attorney Martin asked about those solar rates and potential state statutes related to those.
Yes, thank you. And I will apologize. I did send Commissioner Kohlhoff and Mr. Marsh and Ms. Moore an email answering that. And my usual practice is to send that to the full commission, and I, for some reason, just didn't. But I'll report out my findings. And Commissioner Kohlhoff, I think, was concerned about or asked me to look into the fees associated with solar panel installations, and specifically whether the legislative response to the Evergy case may affect our ability to charge the fees. Ultimately, I determined that no, the statute that was enacted in response to Evergy's case does not apply to the city. It does apply to electric or gas utilities, and it prevents them from charging higher fees based on utilization of solar. But I did not find anything that would prohibit the city from charging, a building permit fee or something akin to that for oversight of a solar panel installation. So my opinion was that in the absence of a statutory preemption, the city can charge reasonable fees for permits associated with building permits, including solar panel installations.
City Manager Marsh, how many solar, I guess, what is the standard process for solar permitting at this time?
I'd have to refer to Travis for that.
City Inspector Travis Dearman. How they go about getting a solar permit now, it's basis off of a building permit and an electrical permit. If they have a solar array that's set up, not installed on the rooftop, that's a electrical permit fee only. If they have a solar array that's mounted to the house, that becomes a building permit because it requires an engineer to make sure that this house is structurally sound enough to support the weight of the roof panels. With that, when they apply for that, we ask for the Evergy agreement that they get, interconnection agreement that they get with them. And that's pretty much the gist of how they sign up, apply for a permit. We haven't researched enough on the changing of the fees. Most likely the permit fees will go to how many kilowatts they're generating, as that's what most of the other towns do, is they charge on that. So did I answer that?
Yeah, and just more specifically, what are the costs associated with either the electrical or the building permit?
So electrical permit fee is a $25 set fee. The building permit fee is based on value of work. So for the first 1,000, it's the $25. And then every 1,000 after that is $3.50. It's not entirely common, but it has happened where the roof had to be shored up, you might say, to install a roof panels on and something like that.
So essentially you're just removing the duplicate $25 for the first 1,000 when there is a building permit required. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that answers all my questions. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions for city staff on this item?
I would, I'm sorry, no questions for city staff, but the thing I mentioned at the last meeting was the water reconnection fee. I would like to see that lowered, if anything. I don't know if there's an appetite from my fellow commissioners to do the same.
We did research some information on surrounding towns reconnect fees since the last meeting. Chapman's reconnect fee is $100. Solomon first is 25, second 50, and third is 75. Junction City is 50, and rural water, which we supply water to, is 100.
Can you explain rural water? I mean, is that
Rural
just,
Water District 2 that buys the water from the city of Abilene.
is that just for the district or is that for individual customers?
I believe it's for individual customers.
So-
That's the fee that they charge customers.
City staff are actually turning on and off
No,
water?
that's rural water turns off. Their rural water staff turns on and off their meters.
Oh,
Excuse me, that's what they charge to
just-
turn it back on, just like we charge. Yeah.
Gotcha. Right now, that's a totally manual process. Is that correct? And how many of those a month are there? And how many customers? 600 some?
30.
Oh, yeah.
And those bills go out the 15th of the month, and then they receive a disconnect notice on the 25th of the month, and then they have until the 4th of the following month to
Yeah.
pay. So they have plenty of notice.
Yeah.
And a lot of them just pay it every month because they budget to have their water turned off.
And I will say there are organizations in town that can pay for like help pay the water bill. So if they call, places can help pay that. So it doesn't get shut off.
Yeah, so Brad Anderson, Public Works Director. Yeah, just a little bit of information since I've been involved with this for quite a bit, for the last year now. 80 is an average number. There's definitely months where we're in the hundreds, and that's unbelievable to think, but the statement that Shayla just made is definitely true. Unfortunately, we see a lot of habitual. At the time their water's getting turned off, the statement that they're technically already 2.5 weeks behind on their payment is a true fact. So they've already been given that leeway. It is water shut off day is a very chaotic day for Public Works to go around and do that. And then it does stem some individuals to get their bill taken care of, and then it turns back into a water on day. So and we've had the scenarios, unfortunately, where people are trying to turn on their own water on their own, and water locks and all that are kind of part of the whole process. So, but yeah, it ends up being a very busy day.
And ideally, you wouldn't have to turn any off.
Ideally, that'd be
I
correct.
know,
That'd be
I
the
know.
perfect
That would be
world.
ideally,
But
I know.
What is the average water bill? I mean, mine, I think is in the $30 range.
yeah,
Really, all my kids were home.
Are you talking just water or the
Yeah.
whole utility bill? Just water or whole utility bill?
Let's say just the water. I mean, I'm assuming they're not paying any of the utility bill if they're not paying the water.
I would
they're
say
not
only
paying
from
any of
what
it.
I've seen, and I'm not really in on the billing, so don't quote me 100% on this, but I've seen a lot of amounts where it's anywhere from that $30 range to that $100 range easily, somewhere in there. And I know there's other situations where there's more, and we honestly get the pattern of there are certain times of year where we have a higher rise, and one of them's coming up real quick with Christmas time. 4th of July is a big one in the month of July, where their money's going. There are other things that set back the situations, and they're all honestly, you just can't make them all up. But yes, we kind of did look into this, and our average number is 80.
Again, I'm looking to my commissioners for some guidance here, but I don't feel like adding penalties to people who are maybe less well equipped to pay it is the direction I think we should be taking as a city. I will say I'm also wondering operationally, Brad, I don't know if you have any experience with this outside of Abilene, but if it makes sense just to not shut the water off for an additional month or something like that. I mean, I understand that there's staff time, and the staff time is probably not going to be paid even by the $50 by the time they get somebody out there, especially if they lock it out and turn it back on and all that. I'm just wondering if it makes sense just to preserve the staff time and give them 60 days or an additional 30 days, or it's that second month of not being paid, rather than charging additional fees.
Honestly, sorry, I honestly,
Brad, let me say
Yeah.
that's a policy decision that has to be made at the commission level. It's not something I would recommend. It's not a best practice, but obviously it's whatever the commission wants to do. It's you guys run the city, so or govern the city. So it would be a commission level decision that would warrant much more conversation.
Exactly.
The $30 is fine. I mean, the staff doesn't have any issue either way. If commission wants to keep it at $30, we explained why we wanted to raise it to $50, but it's not a, it may deter some, it may not. You're gonna have a certain segment and probably 80's a good number for us, but anywhere you go, any city has a percentage, has the recurring people that have their water shut off every time and not shutting it off for 60 days is not gonna help pay their bills. So that would be a policy decision that would have to be made by the commission. And I would recommend that be at a later date, and not try to tackle it now.
I mean, frankly, increasing the reconnection fee from 30 to 50 is a policy decision as well. So I mean, we're having policy decisions right now regarding it. So if we don't have to have the discussion at all, but I think we're clearly penalizing the people at the bottom of the food chain here.
I would look to City Attorney and Martin as well, if there's any statutes that cover extending the period of time. I know there's statutes on when we have to get the notices out to people.
As we sit here today, I'm not aware of any statute that would preclude the city from providing a longer cure period. And I would agree that that would be a policy decision.
I think I would go with the $30 instead of the $50 before I would give a longer period. I've worked with clients that struggle financially for probably the past 10 years. And what I've seen with like effigy and gas and all of that is during the cold winter months, it just adds up. So like if you gave 60 days, I think it's just going to be a larger water bill. I haven't seen, I think your heart is in the right place. And I think like the intention is wonderful. I just don't know if giving a longer time is going to be beneficial. So
I guess I'm just looking at, just so I'm clear, I'm looking at the policy too of, I mean, we're actually physically sending someone out in a city truck to go get out of that. And it's probably going to be either freezing cold or steaming hot. And someone has to go and actually do that. And I think there's a question of, not just the funds coming out of the customer's pocket, but also the resources that the city's expending.
yeah.
And I'm not sure, just as a matter of policy, that it makes sense to expend those human resources for that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I get, well, I thought you were just doing it to be nice and I like that too. So
I can also say that during COVID, when we did have to extend the time frame and not shut people's water off, people got into a big jam because they were way behind on their bills.
Do you have any further questions for city staff on that item?
Would you entertain a motion to consider of approval of resolution number 112524-2, a resolution concerning license permit and other user related fees of the city of Abilene, with the exception of number 3, leaving that at $30?
yes, I would second that. I will second that.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, would a roll call vote? Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. Our next item is 7D, consider approval of the Dickinson County Courthouse Addition Final Replat. Community Development Director Zook.
Good afternoon. I think I discussed this in length at the last meeting, but if you have any questions on follow-up, again, this is just a replat to clean up the records of the areas, the parcels that are surrounding the Dickinson County Courthouse. And again, Janelle Dockendorf, County Administrator, is here if you have any further questions as well.
I have a random question. Is there a policy where you can administratively approve replats?
I don't believe so. And Aaron Martin, city attorney, can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the code, it states out the list of what we have to do. And it's as far as a public hearing and things like that. So I'm not aware of any administrative approval that we can do with something simple as this.
Thank you.
City Attorney Martin, do you have any opinion on that?
On a plat of this nature, no, it would need to go through this process and be presented to the governing body. And primarily in this role, you are accepting the dedication of public right of way. That's what you are doing by virtue of approving this item. There are like a lot split, for example, technically modifies a plat that can be done administratively. And I think there may be a simplified procedure that doesn't require a preliminary and a final, but they all have to go through the planning commission and then be presented to the governing body for acceptance of the primarily acceptance of the public right of way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do we have any further questions for city staff on this item? Okay. Thank you, Carrie.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the Dickinson County Courthouse addition final replat.
I'll second it.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Witt.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. Our next item is 7E. Resolution number 112524-3, a resolution approving longevity pay per section 13.16 of the Employees Policies and Guidelines of the City of Abilene, Kansas. City Clerk Moore.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is the resolution that would approve the annual longevity pay paid to city employees.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2524-3, a resolution approving longevity pay per section 13.16 of the Employee Policies and Guidelines of the City of Abilene, Kansas.
I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Meisenberg.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Witt.
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. Our next item under items for discussion is 8A, consider a bid from J&K Contracting LC in the amount of $162,253.50 for the Spruce Way Water Line Replacement Project. Public Works Director Anderson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is the topic of the Spruce Way water line replacement. So real quick, I want to apologize that didn't list it in the background, but we discussed this earlier this year. This was the specific location where our crews dealt with several water main breaks just from weakening structures and pipes throughout the summer months. And the concerns were getting into the deep winter and or just everything that's going wrong up there. So we brought this to you then. So basically the bid opening for this project took place at 2:00 on November 21st. Olson Engineering emailed the bid documents to 23 local contractors, and of those, only 6 requested plans. And J&K Contracting was the only contractor to turn in a bid out of all of them. So we are recommending to award the contract to J&K Contracting for the amount of $162,253.50. We would also, if possible, like to have approval today so that we can, the contractor can move forward with ordering parts. There's a little bit of leeway in water parts and meters and all that kind of distribution right now. So in order to get the ball rolling in a more timely manner, that's kind of what we're asking for today.
Do you have a feel for why we only got one bid?
Do not know.
Okay.
That's what I was going to ask as well. Seems
We
odd.
did have some, immediately just say they were passing, not interested. I do not know, whether they already had projects lined up, kind of out of our realm. So really, honestly, no other information. And, as you can see that this, water line is budgeted in the 2025 budget, so. Any other questions?
So
think-
this is, you said it's in the 2025 budget, so we wouldn't be expending any funds until next year on this anyway.
Yes, correct. We want to get the project, the parts of it going. If we get approval and they get to rolling on it, they think they can get started pretty soon and they'd like to have it done by the end of February. Of course, we're gonna deal with weather situations then too. We had some easements we had to take care of up in the area, some permanents and some temporary easements, just because of the location that I think we're all taken care of there.
I would make a motion to approve a bid from J&K Contracting in the amount of $162,253.50 for the Spruceway water line replacement project.
I'll second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, would a roll call vote? Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. Next item is 9A, City Manager's Report. City Manager Marsh.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Department news. The police department has received their 2 new patrol vehicles as approved by the commission earlier this year. They have a new and they have a new look. Both are silver Dodge Durangos and are currently being outfitted with equipment. The Convention and Visitors Bureau news, the Abilene CVB continues to be recognized for its outstanding marketing efforts. At the 2024 Kansas Tourism Conference in Olathe, they won 100% of the awards they entered. The CVB proudly earned the 2024 Best Community Awareness Campaign Award from the Travel Industry Association of Kansas for its I Like Ike campaign. In addition, the Abilene CVB earned the Best Collaboration Award in the large budget category for the Kansas Gunsmoke Trail, a joint effort with Dodge City, Hayes, and Wichita. In Public Works, the Northwest 14th Street Road Reconstruction Project has won the American Council of Engineering Companies in Kansas City Public Improvement Award for the 5,000 to 19,999 population category. Big congratulations to our engineering team at Olson and to the general contractor Smoky Hill Construction. From the Fire Department, Assistant Chief Jeremy Stuck has completed the Task Force Leader Certification and will be able to lead teams on the regional task force. Community Development. Scooters opened last week. If you haven't been by there, it's great. Holiday Inn has received their temporary certificate of occupancy, and the Golden Belt Heights apartments have received their certificate of occupancy and are open for leasing, and I believe there are actually people living there now. And Parks and Recreation, the Parks and Recreation Department has received a $10,000 check from the Jeffcoat Memorial Foundation. These scholarship funds are used for youth activities and swim passes for those on free or reduced lunches. Over 250 youth have benefited this year, and over $8,000 in scholarships have been given due to the generosity of the Jeffcoat Foundation. What questions do you have for me?
Have any questions on the city manager's report? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion?
We're moving right into land bank meeting. Cool.
Have any further commission discussion? Okay. Seeing none, would a roll call vote? Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion carries. We're adjourned. I will now call to order the Abilene Land Bank Board of Trustees meeting for November 25th, 2025. Shayla, may we please have roll call?
Mayor Ryan,
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Koloff,
Here.
Commissioner Witt,
Here.
Commissioner Meisenberg.
Here.
Roll call's complete.
Thank you. And for the consent agenda, look for approval of the agenda for today's meeting, as well as the meeting minutes from the May 13th, 2024 Land Bank Board of Trustees meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, would a roll call vote? Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Meisenberg.
Yes.
Myself, yes, motion carries. Next item is number 5, public comments and communications. If there's anyone that would like to address the commission on an item not on the land bank agenda, they may do so at this time. Do we have anyone that would like to address the commission? Okay. Seeing none, we will move into item 6, consider approval of a real estate donation agreement for the donation of 3 parcels of land in the Cedar Ridge Estate subdivision to the City of Abilene Land Bank in exchange for the waiver of past due special assessments on said lots. City Manager Marsh.
Commissioners, staff has received a request from Thad Reynolds with Cedar Ridge Estates, a Cedar Ridge Estates representative to donate the development's 3 remaining parcels to the Abilene Land Bank in exchange for a waiver of the past due special assessment on those 3 lots. This development was set up on 2 different 20-year special assessment payment schedules, one for streets, street lighting, sanitary sewer and water improvements, and the other for storm sewer and drainage improvements. The first year payment started in 2009. The final year will be in 2028. These lots are block 4, lot 1, block 6, lot 2, block 6, lot 5. In your packet are the paid to date specials, and the past due, and then the remaining balance up to 2028. Both Thad Reynolds is with us on Zoom. You can see him there to answer any questions, and also Carrie Zook is here to answer any questions.
Mr. Marsh, I would be happy to speak to the changes that we made this morning, unless those were presented already.
Yes, so there was a revised agreement done by City Attorney Martin this morning. I think Shayla was putting it out on. Okay, I'm
I
ready.
believe we
Run
received
back and
it.
Get those. So yes, we did send that to Thad. I discussed that with Thad this morning. I haven't received a call back, but I'm assuming he was good with those. He may bring that up, but in the meantime, I will go grab.
Aaron, can you talk to those
Yeah.
changes real quick?
I think I can just describe it. They're
Okay, that works.
relatively easy, and three categories of changes that Mr. Reynolds brought up. The first one was simply a correction that to a mistake that I had made. The proposed agreement will allocate all fees and costs associated with closing to the City of Abilene, including title insurance fees and any other recording fees and costs. The original draft in section 3.1 and 3.2 misstated that and allocated some of the fees and costs to the donor. So we corrected that. So the only fees and costs that Mr. Reynolds or his entity will bear will be any costs that he incurs with his counsel or accountant or anything like that. I will speak briefly. There was a reference made to waiver or release from special assessments. The way the land bank statutes work is that if at the time of taking title to any property, there are any delinquent real estate taxes or assessments, those are addressed in 2 unique ways. So in this case, the land bank would take title to this property. There are delinquent, just general ad valorem taxes, and the land bank statutes provide that once the property is conveyed to the land bank, the county treasurer must wipe the slate clean and essentially erase those delinquent ad valorem taxes. So the section 7 provides that the land bank will take title subject to any past or future taxes. And the objective there was simply to give Mr. Reynolds assurances that he's not being looked to pay any taxes at closing to bring them current, as is customarily the case with real estate transactions. With respect to delinquent special assessments, we've also provided that we will take title subject to those. Just again, to assure Mr. Reynolds that he is not expected to pay those at closing either. Those will not be wiped off by the county treasurer. They will technically still be attached to the property. The land bank statutes give the city and the land bank authority to enter into a separate agreement, which we would do in the future if you wish to do so. But that agreement could defer or re-amortize or abate any or all of those special assessments. We don't have to make a decision on that today, but eventually this property could be put back to into private hands. And at that time, unless any action is taken to abate those assessments, they would technically still be attached to the property. But the main point for today's purpose is that this land bank will be taking title and essentially forgiving the donor of any obligation to pay those. The final change is to paragraph 8, the initial draft, which I think is probably consistent with one you have before you, provided that the donor would convey the property via a warranty deed. It was requested that we change that to a quitclaim deed. We did make that change, and the one I think is being proposed will provide for a quitclaim deed. I'd be happy to speak to the difference, but it essentially involves the donors not making any warranties about title, that it's free and clear of anything. We were comfortable with that change just at the staff level on the basis that the contract provides for the city to obtain title insurance as part of the closing. So a title company will ensure that the property is in fact free and clear of any objectionable liens or other title issues. And if there are, we would likely bring it back to you and object to proceeding with closing. Those were the 3 changes. And I guess any motion to approve the contract would just ask that it includes those changes as I just described.
Any question for city staff?
Does the city have a plan for the property?
No, we don't.
Do you have any other questions for city staff? I've got one for the commission, but I want to wait until.
Looking at the map, land bank owns land kind of all around there. Just out of my own curiosity, Carrie, do you know much about how the city got about having that, other than some of those adjoining properties within the land bank?
That I do not.
Okay.
I don't have any information on that. I do know that several of these parcels have gone to the Dickinson County tax sale, the sheriff's tax sale, and they have offloaded some of them via that. But these are the remaining 3. But I'm not sure why. I know we own the 17-acre parcel that abuts this other one that he's looking to donate. But I'm not sure why we own the other one.
Mr. Reynolds might have some clarity for us on that.
I do.
Okay. I'll leave it at that.
The my old partner, Kelly Dunn Construction, owned 40% of Cedar Ridge Estates, and on his way out the door, he donated at the time a percentage, and the city came up with his percentage being the ones that the land bank has now in their possession at that time. I believe that was 2014, maybe. And it might have been before that, maybe 2012.
Yes, Commissioner Cole, I've had a question for you, just in general, having a lot of real estate knowledge. I guess, have you seen this happen in other communities where we're taking that donation back, but there's still quite a large chunk of specials due?
I think that was kind of the story of Junction City's property tax woes, frankly. I mean, they ended up taking 1,500 lots. I mean, more than 1,000 lots. Kind of with the same premise. I think Mr. Reynolds, I purchased my real estate agency from Mr. Reynolds' parents, and so I have kind of some intimate knowledge. I was kind of involved with that agency while they were developing that. I know you've endured blood, sweat, and tears in that development, and have probably spent significantly more than the amount of taxes and specials you're asking essentially to be forgiven through this gift to be able to get that going and provide housing that was needed, frankly, even more then than we need housing now. But that's kind of been my experience with it. Is Junction City, I mean, they took on a whole subdivisions in varying degrees of development.
Yeah, in my situation is, we were selling these lots for somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 based on what we were going to have to get for them to profit of any sort. And then, whoa, can you still hear me?
I can hear you, Thad, but it looks like you and me and Dominic.
Yeah, I wonder how you get back into the meeting.
Perhaps they will add us back. I'm reluctant to sign off right away.
Yeah, me too. Okay. By the way, thank you for making those changes. I know you're on vacation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy. Pretty easy. I apologize that the first one got past me. I was moving too quick, trying to get ready to go on vacation, and didn't catch that.
Yeah, I was trying to find a lawyer just to kind of take a look at it, and my just lives up the street from me is Mark.
Oh yeah,
which was the one-time city attorney, and I was like, yeah, if you want
yeah,
take a look at it. So
good comments, and happy to help.
Thanks. I'll call John Koloff real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll sit tight. All right. All right. Bye. They're working on trying to get us back on.
Oh, nice.
How long have you been the city attorney?
I want to say like 2018-ish, 2000.
Okay.
Well, definitely might have been 2017. But yeah, probably about 7 years. I'm with Clark, Mize, and Linville and Salina, and we represent some other cities as well. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's great. Are you with Caw Valley?
No, I'm with Earl's Engineering, actually.
Earl's Engineering. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have seen your name. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I own my own company there in Abilene, Landmark Surveying, for many years, and did a lot of work over in the Salina area. I think I've done work with Clark Mize.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I'm sure we've crossed paths. I just couldn't remember how.
Yep. I got an office in Liberal. That's where I'm at now. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, it's a ways. I gotta head back to Abilene tomorrow. So for the
What's that? A 3-hour drive?
4.5, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it twice.
I just drove back from Elkhart.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was right by you.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, Elkhart. What were you doing in Elkhart?
At a county commission meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are you both able to hear us again?
I can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So I think Thad, you were just talking about, I guess maybe some difficulties in selling the properties. You're trying to recoup $30,000 for the lots, and I think that's where it cut off. So
Yeah, and obviously since the transition of Highland project into Golden Belt, any interest in those lots has definitely gone away because I mean we can't compete at that level of what they can do up at Golden Belt for lot prices and things like that. So our thought is to go ahead and just donate, these last three remaining, get everything tied off. The other thing that's kind of started this was I have actually had a couple inquiries from other people asking about whether they can put modular homes or award craft or things like that out there. And their thought was, we'll wait the specials out and then swoop in and get them and do that. I kind of thought that was probably not in the best interest of Cedar Ridge out there with nice stick built homes. So my thought was getting it to the city kind of in advance so that can be protected a little bit and the city can kind of have a little bit more direction, a little bit more hands-on with what's going on out there in the future. And somebody else is actually thinking storage units on one of the corners, which I don't care, but there's a nice infrastructure with sewer and water right there, and having storage units doesn't make a lot of sense to, when you have the utilities, right there for something commercial or whatever. So that's the motivation behind it.
Just a quick question. Were you running into any, or I guess issues selling them if you had mentioned Kelly Dunn had divested or donated his 40% stake in 2012 or 2014? Were you having those same issues selling prior to the Golden Belt Heights lots being sold? There's a pretty large time gap there.
Yeah, I mean, we stopped speccing homes and selling them after we broke our ties with Kelly Dunn Construction, and I guess we just didn't have, at the time we had three people left, and the three of us couldn't really see eye to eye on the direction of what we were going to do in the future for Cedar Ridge. My other two partners are not of the community. I'm the only one. Since then, now there's only two partners, myself and my younger brother. We're the only two left. And so, yeah, that was kind of the reason that there's been kind of a gap in that area, in that time frame.
Do you have any other questions for Mr. Reynolds or city staff? It's my own personal opinion. I would like to see that contract before approving this. If there were adjustments made. Because I mean, some of the changing
We've
of
got it back in the
fees and-
office. We can get it for you here before.
Right, but changing of fees, all of that, and I think that would be important to look at prior to approving.
Do you want to just go through those in detail, or is there some way we can do that?
Would just like to see the actual updated contract first with that language.
City Attorney
get that.
Martin, is that something you've got on email, or is there a way we could get that to?
We've got a copy in the carry. I mean, I've got one here. I just don't have a way of printing it here. So,
I have a paper copy.
oh,
I have the updated paper copy. I just didn't.
I mean, I really don't want to waste our time and review it here, but I guess with that, I would make a motion to table this item until the next regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion?
Do we need to schedule that since there are no regular meetings at the land bank?
I guess my plan was just to have a land bank meeting at our next regular commission meeting. That works. Do we have any further commission discussion?
Is there any urgency from any party on this matter?
There is on mine. I would like to see it in by the end of the year, before the end of the year. For the end of the calendar year, for sure.
So our next regular meeting would be the 9th of December.
Correct. Yep. Okay. Any further commission discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to roll call vote. Commissioner Koloff,
Nay.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
myself, yes. Motion to table carries. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn the land bank meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Seeing none, we do roll call vote. Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call to order the November 25th, 2024 City of Abilene, Kansas City Commission study session. First item is 2A, Northeast 15th Street Drainage Study, Public Works Director Anderson.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I am actually going to lean on Jared Loomis quite a bit during this information part. Obviously, this is the Northeast 15 drainage study area. I guess the biggest thing in this whole scenario, if you guys have received this information, is this is going to be totally up to you as a commission to decide what plan we want to take. Do we want to do anything? Or, this is basically just the fact finding of a couple options that were presented to us based on their study. And I'll let him have it from here. Okay.
Yep. Jared Loomis Olson. So yeah, I'm the one behind the study. Followed the same format that we outlined at the previous work session where we looked at two options. One, connecting at the northeast at the Brady and Charles Road intersection. That was the closest point where we had city underground storm sewer infrastructure. So that was one option. A second one is, as Brad was saying, it would require more footprint for the city to obtain easement on and or property acquisition. But it would put in a detention basin and then outlet to the surface at Wildcat Street. So it would not connect into underground infrastructure. We have enough cover. So we got the survey we need and have enough cover that we can outlet a pipe and then essentially put in a flume that would outlet to the curb. So just with that, I don't know if there's any specific questions, but obviously there's costs included and a big cost difference for both as well.
Yeah, that was my question regarding it. Obviously option one seems fairly cost prohibitive to do, especially for us. I mean, it's a big problem, but it's a fairly small area.
Yeah, I'll jump in with that. So as we obviously looking at the overall drainage area, so that exhibit 1 drainage area map, you can see the overall drainage area is approximately 33 acres. So using city criteria to size the pipe according to, and we tried to, it wasn't even feasible to get it all the way there, but obtaining a 2-year design storm and then a 10-year design storm is what the basis was off of, which is why the pipes are so large and the increased cost. But that comes from, trying to meet City of Abilene storm sewer drainage criteria as closely as possible. So.
Can you, I think I heard you say you could not meet that criteria. Can you explain that?
Yes. So unless we were going to extend the project limits further downstream, connecting in with a similar pipe size to the project limits at Brady Street and Charles Road, we cannot maintain a 10-year design storm for the entire storm sewer design. We can maintain a 2-year design storm along Charles Road. And then at Wildcat Street, we could obtain a 10-year design storm. But that just comes on based on limitations We could look further downstream if necessary, but based on the project limits being what we established in a previous work session, we have not done that yet. We were just sticking to the project limits as previously described.
So just so I'm clear, can you explain what the, like, say, real world consequences of not being able to meet the 10-year, like what does that 10-year storm look
So it
like?
would just be an accepted risk of more flooding in the street for a portion of time. And when I say that, not hours, but minutes, just realistically. So design storms are established based on, 15-minute time of concentrations, which would be, 15 minutes into the worst storm. That's the flooding we designed for. So communities, well, even City of Abilene has an accepted minimum time of concentration at 15 minutes. So some communities would have that at 5, and previous, the drainage criteria, whenever it was established, the city accepted more risk to essentially say in the 5 to 15 minutes, we are, accepting that our roads would be flooded or more inundated with water. It's, typically that comes down to financial decisions. I think a lot of times I've heard the discussion that, well, when it's raining really, really hard, between that 5 and 15 minutes, if there's and it still doesn't encompass the whole road. But if half the lane is filled up, that was a risk that some communities have accepted.
And to clarify, just make sure I understand it right, from reading the proposal that was in our packet, that inability to meet that 10-year design standard was just with option 1. Option 2 meets the 10-year.
Correct. So option 2, yeah, and it gets a little complicated with option 2. So that was based off the city detention criteria. So typically how a new project would go is existing ground gets developed. Well, what leaves the site has to match the 10-year storm that would leave the site in existing conditions. So greenfield site, obviously there's a certain amount of stormwater that leaves it. When you pave it, that increases it. So you put in detention to make sure that it matches the same. Here, since everything is developed already, what we did is assume and you can see drainage area A1 on exhibit 1. So what we assumed is that let's calculate a flow rate for A1 being non-developed. And so then we designed the detention basin as if it was put in to match that flow rate. So we kind of had to back calc, because when you put in a detention basin, there needs to be a goal to what you're designing to. I mean, you could technically make it with a 4-inch outlet pipe that would really choke down the water, but there just has to be a goal. So the goal is established to meet the 10-year storm exiting that A1 drainage area.
So would a good comparison to think of just in recent memory is like the Family Dollar Tree, where they had to put in that detention basin coming off of.
Yeah, Faith Avenue or west of Faith. Is that?
It's southwest of that.
Yep, that would be, okay. Yes, that would be accurate. And that one, so that one right now is sized for all of that development. So the housing project that went into the northwest there, that detention basin is already sized for that development. So that's why they weren't required to do anything.
I think you might be speaking of the
one along. Those are two different ones.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
There's one along Buckeye in front of the Family Dollar.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that.
I think I remember. Yes, similar idea. I remember reviewing that. It's been a few years though, but similar idea. Matching the flow that leaves this site as it sits with no development is the idea behind a detention basin. And the only thing is it takes a bigger footprint. Obviously, there's more private land to go through and to navigate there.
That's fairly sizable cost difference.
Can you maybe give me a reason why we would choose the first option?
Why you would not?
Why we would? Sell me that one.
If there was known flooding issues at the intersections along Charles, that would, like I said, with 33 acres drainage training there, and Brad can maybe speak to, sometimes there's complaints from residents, hey, this intersection's always flooded. Even hypothetically, if there's flooding on Jayhawk, Hickok, or Brown, this would give you storm sewer to connect to and then extend south up that street. That would be a primary one. Also just to keep as much stormwater going into public right of way as it does now, or as it does not do now, because that drainage area, if you refer back to exhibit 1, A1, that drainage area all flows to the northeast, kind of through the residences, and then eventually gets to Wildcat Street. Option one would take that 1.61 acres out to the west and put it into city right away sooner. Option two still diverts the water, but you know, just where you're sending the water or where the water goes would still be going through easements and, you know, closer to houses, residences. But
I appreciate that question. That was actually what I was going to ask you is with that large of a cost difference, is the benefit worth the additional
yeah,
cost? in that
well,
situation?
and property acquisition. So I don't, you know, some of the properties may be, you know, absolutely no goes to get easements or to acquire. That would be another reason, but and then I guess there would be less utility conflicts going with option one, but that's factored into the cost estimate, and it's of course not 800,000 of utility relocation. So option two, the detention basin does get more complicated with utilities, but I mean we don't have potholes on those, but I'm confident we could work something out.
I think what I heard you say is that this didn't look downstream of this study area.
It does not look downstream of Brady and Charles. Correct.
But likely there will be further with either of these options, there will be a further concentration of stormwater, likely that goes kind of, I think that's like between Faith and Elise there to the north in that drainage area, which I would say is not a particularly fast draining area. Do you have any data on that?
I don't, and so this wouldn't actually send any more water. All of the water that's going there now would go there with either option. We would not be shifting any drainage areas around. It would potentially convey water there sooner, but also sometimes it will get there sooner before all the water from northwest of there could get there. So we haven't looked at that, but it could potentially improve based on it hit the peak hydrographs hitting at different times would be a potential option.
I guess I'm just concerned about the potential of causing problems. We're essentially using that neighborhood as a detention pond right now. I mean, I agree, all that water is going there, but we don't have a good understanding of the timing of that. I don't know if there's some of those homes that are built not very high above that water level. I think we need to make sure we're not causing problems.
Commissioner Ryan may have been on the city commission. At one point, we had a meeting where a whole group of these property owners in the area came and spoke. And I think it seems like everybody in that spot deals with stormwater issues, flooding into garages, stuff like that. Just because there's no storm sewer anywhere in that neighborhood.
Yep.
So that's what, yeah, talking through the clarifications of option one, it's like, yeah, more storm sewer inlets would be good, but it comes at that extensive price tag. So,
and where were those residents at? Or
there was,
for my-
I just remember one was the Biggs family. I remember him
a few
specifically.
years.
For some reason, it sticks in my head, him talking about flooding into his garage. So, I don't know, he'll probably go back and watch this or I'll get quoted and I'll get an email or something.
Where is that home?
If I had a map in front of me, I'd be able to show, but it's on the, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. You can see drainage area F1. It's the large 12-acre drainage area that then essentially flows down Jayhawk. Yeah, that's a really large drainage area to carry only in the street.
Yep.
And that's hence the option one of getting storm sewer to that intersection. I mean, that's not even extending it up because again, the impetus behind this study was to solve the problem on 15th Street. So, but that would give you the flexibility to extend storm sewer up Jayhawk in the future, whereas an option two would not. Of course, you know, it would just be a more localized problem draining out to Wildcat.
And if I understand that correctly, then option two will not address that at all. That the flooding along Jayhawk that will potentially still be a problem.
Correct. Yep. It would not, it would not change that. It would not make it worse, but it would not change that.
I don't know if Mr. Anderson would be willing to speak to some of the maybe issues that he's aware of in that area.
Yeah, so I went up there on a couple of different heavy rainstorms that we've had throughout the summer and this fall. We do get the natural flow of the ground. When you go up in that area, you do see that everything's tapering off to the northeast. It's a given. Most of those streets in there, and I happen to be looking at the drainage area map here. I have the street names. When you get into Jayhawk, Hickok, Brown, all of them are at some point pressing and sloping to the north. So I think he hit it right on the head. When we see them heavy rains, we do see the water hitting Charles Road and then naturally flowing east because of the natural lay of the ground. I would say that that time frame he gave for the excess water is pretty accurate. I think the biggest thing, even since I've been here, one of the topics that was brought up is some of the flow up on the west part of this study area, and behind the mini storage area and the Hookman residence that we've all been aware of. Some of this proposal, from what I understand, was going to take care of some of the drainage issues as it approached that property and basically diverting also. I do agree with the statement that was said in option 2 is the area to the east from Brady Street, talking about Brown, Hickok, Jayhawk, that proposal of, in my opinion, would not necessarily take care of all the drainage issues. What we're looking at is basically trying to control what's already taken place up in that area. And so the decision on which way you all would want to go is a big part of that. Is how do we want to try and control what is naturally going on with the lay of the ground up there? I do agree that placing culverts, tubing, piping, whatever you want to call it, is going to be expensive. There's no doubt about that. It would probably help control some things though. So I just do agree that there's the water. We do have the problems up there and it's been noted. So I think either improvement we do would be a good thing and beneficial. Just, it's naturally going to go where water wants to go.
So I'm going to ask you a question you don't have to answer. So obviously this detention basin here be about let's just call it 250,000. Is there, and this is just completely unprompted. So, is there a good location that you would know of? And I didn't ask Jared this for reasons because I know there's been no engineering look at it. Is there another location that could help alleviate the other drainage issues with a detention basin in that area? So this would take care of that immediate area. But then we talk about Wildcat or Jayhawk, Hickok, Brown, all of that. Is there another location we can place an additional detention basin to help control any of that?
I'd have to say at this point, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of another location. When you look at the properties, they're pretty much all spoken for. I do not, just unaware of anything, honestly. I don't see any other place there. Another detention pond would be feasible. By the time, if you went north of Charles Road, and I'm just talking off a reference here, I think you start getting into the Dawson Addition area. And by then you're already past where the problem in the natural flow goes. Yeah, so you're breaking back, and his comment on the downstream effect of what water would be flowable is because of where the water, once it would cross underneath Brady Street, basically into the farm ground area, what could be handled and where the flow rate would go from there. And it's, by the time you get down in that area, most of the water's already came off the big hill where all the residential area is, so it's not going to go anywhere fast at that point. So
I'm looking at kind of that Jayhawk area, and I'm making some assumptions here that F1 area, predominantly what I think is maybe the mini storage. I think there's a mobile home park, then Pioneer Farm and Ranch, where we basically have no, I mean, it's all paved, right? Or not permeable, semi-permeable maybe, but a lot of the runoff is probably starting in those areas. Is that a fair assumption, or do we have data on that?
I'd say it's a fair assumption of what I have seen, but Jared, you may. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you mentioning specifically the water that flows to Brady and Charles, or just the wild?
Are you talking about where some of the problems start, like around Pioneer, around the trailer?
Yeah, I'm making that assumption. So you've got this F1 drainage area. So I'm assuming kind of just based off of the outlines that you've got water that falls in Pioneer's parking lot and is eventually ending up in someone's backyard on Jayhawk. Again, I'm not sure where those critical areas are.
Yeah. Yes, essentially. So how we split up the drainage areas was essentially where water would reach city right away. Understanding that we shouldn't assume we could go through and do a bunch of drainage improvements on private property, except for the specific problem area on 15th. That resident we do assume we'll have to get in there, get easements, do grading in the backyards, put in an area inlet because that was the requested study area. Yeah, F1, I mean, it's 12 of the 33 acres. So yeah, over 30% does originate there and flows to the north towards Wildcat and then Jayhawk.
Is there a way to address that, like within option 2? I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure what the topology is there, if that's feasible.
We could look at it. I mean, there isn't, excuse me, there isn't a lot of area to put in swales or detention basin to Brandon's point. But that's not to say you couldn't put in maybe a defined swale. But it's pretty tight. There doesn't look to be a lot of area.
And my thought process behind that was simply if there was another prime area for a detention basin, it would be, let's say call it 500,000 if you put in 2 of them. That's just spitballing, but.
No, I totally agree. I mean, we were essentially looking for every lot other than that moment. So yeah, unless there was some owner that would move out and then I don't think out that it would be going. I mean, in some areas where flooding is bad enough that that would occur. The house floods so bad that the owner it moves out and then city obtains it and then puts in either a wider channel or a detention basin there. But I'm not under the impression that would be the path to explore here. But
if you have your map there, if you can look,
sure.
Say due southwest of the corner of Jayhawk Street there, where it goes from east-west to north-south.
Yep.
There is an area there. It looks like it might be behind some duplexes, but again, due north of Pioneer. Is that a potential area? And it looks like it is private property, but
yeah, it would. I mean, that would be a potential one. And again, I think if there was specific and maybe these requests that Brad is getting, if there's specific issues with properties directly downstream, I think that would prompt the more study of similar to what we did along 15th Street. That would be a potential option. That is where that water all flows west of Pioneer. It kind of flows west of their building and into those backyard areas.
And I know in that Jayhawk area where it curves, there's a fairly large issue with underground water flowing through there.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, like I said, 12 acres all flowing towards there with no storm sewer was also the impetus behind putting storm sewer along Charles to try to give you an option to get it there. But again, it's starting to add up on dollars. The minute you extend anything up Jayhawk as well, just price tag goes up.
I'm just looking here, and again, this is all private property, but there's some properties that I think, obviously I'm making the assumption that anything we do on the surface is going to be significantly less expensive than anything we do underground.
Correct. Yes. One other thing to think about though is it may not be able to surface drain depending on the topography. We could look at it. I could cut a profile from Jayhawk and extending it up through that F1 and see. That wouldn't be that hard of an exercise if we want to look at that, just at least to see the viability of looking at a detention basin. But Yeah, that is another thing to consider. With A1, we have enough cover from Wildcat to A1. And in the lot, the option 2 detention basin is proposed. It actually sits quite a bit higher than Wildcat, so we can get the get the depth we need to cover our pipe.
Yeah, because I don't want to Band-Aid, approach this specific area. I want to make sure that we're solve the entire problem. I don't know if that's completely possible without spending millions of dollars, but I want to make sure that we're doing the most we can. And if there is an option to potentially place, and it doesn't necessarily have to be included in the approval of this, but if there's an option to alleviate some of those other issues with spending roughly $500,000 versus 1.1, that'd be ideal, but.
Yep. I mean, that's something, and I can work with Ron on pulling a profile on that and providing something just to see viability. And then, it'd have to take up this much footprint.
Right.
And do you want to take up these backyards with?
And I know it's not gonna be fully designed or engineered or anything, but I think it would give us some good, some good guidance on,
Sure.
if it's worth us approving option 2 in the meantime, and then getting engineering to fix that other problem on the Jayhawk area, versus the $1.1 million fix. That's something to look at, I guess.
Sure. And I mean, yeah, you could wait to approve it, and we could try to get something incorporated into it as well. And if you want to truly see what other options for F1 there are.
Yeah, I'm curious, what is the capacity of the proposed detention pond in option 2?
It conveys the 100 year. So it looks at the 100 years as well, just based on how the sizing works, that the 100-year flow from A1 prior to any development going in is what is outletted from the proposed detention basin.
But so there wouldn't be capacity. And again, I'm not sure if gravity would let you do it, but could you, I guess, either increase the capacity of that to effectively drain those areas to the east?
And you're saying route something to, like, put in more underground and route it to there?
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah. Cause you can see in A1, the drainage area boundary right east of the A1 label, that is a ridge line. So that essentially represents where water flows one direction or the other. So from there, it starts to flow in F1 and kind of through those storage facilities and drains to the east towards Jayhawk. But I mean, we could look at seeing if we could capture some and route it back towards the detention basin. You would have to kind of thread a pipe through those buildings there. But that's an option. I mean, we could see if it allows it. You wouldn't, the one issue with that is you could only capture so much drainage, because it would be essentially on the upstream side of F1. I don't know how much you'd be able to capture, but.
And you might remember, I think you referenced the drainage basin to the west of Faith Avenue.
Yep.
My understanding of the way that was intended to be designed is there's kind of like large rocks and then small rocks and then gravel and then grass, such that most of the drainage, like it was the way it was sold to me anyway, as a former resident, was that we would only see water in that 100-year situation. And in reality, it ended up being a permanent lake. But I'm curious if there's a way to design that such that a lot of the water, while it might be captured on the surface, could also be flowed underneath and then drained.
Yeah, so it would all go, well, up to the 100-year design storm. Option 2 would convey all water through the pipe. Nothing would come and get out of the pond and go downstream that way. Above the 100-year storm, it could, and I would say detention basins typically are not designed to withhold any more than the 100-year design storm.
Yeah, and I guess just so I'm clear, it's designed not to hold the water from F1.
It is not.
Yes, and so my question, just to be very specific, is could that be designed to drain that area as well, both by gravity and design of the basin?
Potentially, or at least a portion. I mean, it could not capture all. Not 12 acres couldn't even get routed there, because you'd be going against gravity so much. But
yeah,
upstream portions could potentially be routed there. Definitely not even probably 6 of the acres, because you can see it's 1.6. We do have some capacity based on how the grading can work out that we could add some. I would be maybe 3 to 4, I would guess, just maximum. Before then, the 100-year and maybe even the 10-year design storm would come out of the pond. overflow the spillway and go downstream.
I'm saying 3 to 4 acres.
Correct.
Okay.
But I would be hesitant in shifting drainage areas too much. I mean, we'd have to be careful about that because the minute you shift drainage area, I guess there is an implied notion that you are draining more water towards someone, even if it's in a detention basin. That goes over certain ways for some residents that you're shifting drainage towards them. But so just something else to consider with that.
Do you have any further questions on that at this time?
I guess my question is, what sort of action might we be taking?
That's what I was just going to ask, Commissioner. So my understanding is this is a study session. We'll have Jared, you can, if you go back and rework some of them, and when you're ready, we'll put it on another study session. So it doesn't necessarily have to be next week. I mean, or 2 weeks it can be, but once we have something more, something additional from Olson, then we can put it on a study session for more discussion.
Do you have a, I guess, rough timeline of what?
Well, Thanksgiving is bad timing here,
Right.
but I would say if not the next one, for sure the one after that,
Okay.
and possibly the next one. Ron, we can just
Yeah, we'll tentatively plan for the 23rd. It might be that first one in January. So
We'll just place it on the study session for discussion.
Yeah, my thought was something like this. You kind of alluded to it. It's good to come up with a solution that's the best long term, and this isn't like replacing a water line where where it needs to get done. So
yes, I would agree. I think this has been an issue probably for a while, but
right,
diving into it a little more is not a horrible idea.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jared. Okay. Our next item is 2B Golden Belt West Multifamily IRB Ordinance, City Manager Marsh and Community Development Director Zook.
Commissioner, this is for the sales tax exemption that Golden Belt West Multifamily LLC had for the construction of the apartment complex out in Golden Belt Heights West. Dominic Eckwith, Gilmore and Bell was supposed to be here, but I checked my email. He's on vacation, so
Oh, I'm still here.
I will turn this over to Aaron. Oh, he's here. Sorry, he's here. I didn't see him up there. Sorry, Dom. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time this evening. The ordinance is the last step in the process related to the IRB for the project that Mr. Marsh referenced. What the ordinance does is authorizes the final issuance of the bonds, the execution of the related documents, including the city taking a leasehold interest in the property and then leasing it back to the developer entity. Because this is a sales tax only IRB, the bonds will have a short-term maturity of about 6 months, 5 months. And then will be unwound at that point. As a reminder, IRBs are not a debt obligation of the city. They are what is referred to as a conduit issuance, to where the obligations for those payments is solely on what we call the project lessee, the company. They don't count against the city's debt limit capacity or anything of that nature. In this case, they were issued for just that sales tax incentive piece. The property is within the previously formed RHID district. And so the property tax increase we see from that activity will help contribute to that RHID, which ultimately goes to help reimburse the city for the infrastructure costs that they've incurred for that development out there. So I will answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Eck, this is Commissioner Kohlhoff. I didn't read or see anywhere in that ordinance where it was specific to the sales tax exemption only. I know there's been some misunderstanding from members of the community on these IRBs for sales tax specifically. I just didn't know if this is just a standard that would be used in any IRB, whether it was for actual bonds for the construction of the project.
Sure, good question. So if there was a property tax component in there, that would be affirmatively stated. And so that since there's no property tax component that is not stated, this is an actual bond issuance. There is a legal obligation for these bonds. It is simply that the company is acting as both the obligor and the purchaser beneficiary of those bonds. And so that is kind of what we refer to as the buy your own bond concept. You see that in the various other documents that are attendant to that ordinance. The ordinance approves site lease, project lease, indenture, bond purchase agreement. That bond purchase agreement lists the company as the bond purchaser, as well as, like I said, that tenant obligor under that site lease and project lease. And so there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of documents there. These are a format that is common with IRBs. Like I said, it does not include the property tax component, but it would were that part of this deal.
Just so I'm clear, this was for a sales tax exemption, and
That
none
is
of the
correct.
documents, none of the documents that we have in front of us really clearly state that. I'm not sure if there's other documents that you referenced, but we have an ordinance in front of us. And just from what I'm seeing, it's not clear that that is the intention of this ordinance.
So when this project was induced with the resolution of intent, a couple years back, I don't have the date off the top of my head, sorry. The resolution of intent to issue bonds included the provision for a sales tax exemption. And at that point, the developer entity relies upon that to make application to the Kansas Department of Revenue for a sales tax exemption certificate. And that resolution of intent from the city is submitted stating that the city intends to allow for that sales tax exemption to occur. That all happens on the front end. The developer takes that sales tax exemption and utilizes it to make purchases related to the project. When they get that sales tax exemption certificate, they also signed a revenue bond agreement. What that states is that if bonds are not ultimately issued for the project, then the developer is responsible to pay back any sales tax they otherwise had been exempted from in reliance on that certificate. And so this is the step that is the end of the line, the end process to say, okay, here comes the bond issuance to basically solidify the use of that sales tax exemption certificate. If you do not actually issue these bonds here, then the developer under that agreement is going to be required to pay back the sales taxes that they were previously exempted from. So at the outset is when that sales tax exemption component language is included, because that's when it's needed to go get that sales tax exemption certificate on the front end.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation there. I've had a couple of, well, I will say even a former economic development director who didn't understand how those worked. And I think that that's a common misconception on how those work within the community. In fact, Commissioner Witt, I think, has probably borne the brunt of some of those discussions as well, thinking he was that we wrote him a $700,000
Oh, the
check.
city's paying for the project.
So,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I understand. The IRBs are a unique animal, certainly. And so happy to provide any information that we can to help make things clear.
Yeah, I appreciate that question and explanation from Dominic. It's one of those things when you're in it, you get it and you understand it. But if you're looking from the outside, sometimes it doesn't always, it's not always abundantly clear in these things. So when you've been around the block a couple of times, that you kind of forget to elaborate sometimes on some specifics to it. So. Do we have any further questions for staff or Dominic on this item? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. Do we have any further commission discussion? Only discussion I have is this is the final adjournment. We've had two and this will be the third, so. No further commission discussion. I will move to roll call vote. Commissioner Meisenberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Koloff.
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
myself, yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. Goodbye.
They locked up the libraries.
You need to take some naps, you get a 30-minute break for a nap and a refresh. If you want to take breaks in between those, we can do it.
No, it was just a long. meeting.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think,
Yeah.
you know, typically we do allow for a few minute breaks, so if you feel like you need it, just ask for it.
Yeah, yeah, I was like, just need to stand up and move to clear my head.